where it is they share thoughts, find out, and every conversation explores the art of thinking. Beyond the obvious, and today I have my special guest. She's a podcast creator as well as a host, speaker, and educator, no other than Miss Yvette Walker.
Hello, Danielle. How are you?
I'm fabulous and excellent, Miss Yvette, and thank you so much for being part of our podcast. And can you please introduce more about yourself?
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. I'm really happy to be here. I am a full-time journalist here in Kansas City. But what we're going to talk about today is an area that I have started to work in on a ministry. It is called Positively Joy Ministries. And it is about, or it is targeted to women who are in a season where they are not with a partner. Either they're separated or divorced, or even perhaps a widow, or has had a breakup. And I started doing this because my podcast on joy, which has been around since 2020, I began to pivot because I am a woman of faith. And I began to feel in my spirit that we needed to talk about divorce and this type of separation as it regards to God's love. In this climate, even today in 2026, women who perhaps, let's just talk about divorce for a second, women who are divorced still feel uncomfortable, perhaps ashamed. Obviously, there's a lot of grief in church circles. And the biggest message I have is to remind them that God's love envelops them, and they don't have to feel alone. They don't have to feel unloved. They don't have to feel guilty or any of that. And so that is the message that we talk about on the Positively Joy podcast.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world, Miss Yvette. Thank you. First of all, let's talk about how to find joy in trouble sometimes. So, tell us the nature of joy in trouble. When we talk about finding joy in hard
Mhm.
times, what are we not talking about? What is the misconception about joy do people need to unlearn before they can truly find in amidst difficulty?
Mm. Such a good question. I think the biggest misconception is that you are going to be happy all the time. You're going to be in a constant state of happiness. That is not true. I think we all know that is not true. And because we live in a world that is continues to change, and we have relationships that change. So, you're not going to necessarily be happy, but joy transcends that. You can still feel a sense of purpose. You can still feel a sense of peace. And through that, you can find your the nature of joy, and you can get joy back in your life. I think if we are chasing things that we think will make us happy, that's where we run into trouble.
Very well said, Miss Yvette. Joy versus happiness. How do you distinguish between circumstantial happiness and the deeper, more resilient joy that can exist alongside pain? What are the
Mhm.
tangible qualities of each?
Mm. Yes, again, and I mentioned it a little bit ago. There's a there's a sense of peace and fulfillment. It is hard to explain for sure. People have come to me and they have said, "You always seem um, you always seem put together, or you always seem like you are um, existing well in the world, for lack of a better word." And I said, "Well, yeah, because I have I have found, and and I'm still on a search or a journey like everybody, but I believe that I found um, what I call perfect peace in my journey. Now, of course, I'm a woman of faith, so I have to speak to it from that regard. Listeners, not all your listeners might be believers in a faith, but I would say that you have to believe in something that is bigger than yourself. So for me, that's God. For other people, it might be something else. We are on this earth. We are small people. There's so much around us. We cannot expect that our lives are going to make the biggest difference on such a big world that we live in. So we have to go beyond that. We have to find something that is bigger than ourselves. So again, you might be in a situation where you are grieving the loss of a person. For example, my sister died a year ago in December. And that was very rough because she was my only sister, my only sibling. So I didn't have any other brothers or sisters. And I felt a very big loss, or a very big kind of hole in my life. But for me, there were some other aspects that I knew that she was, and I know some people don't like to say this, but I knew in my heart she was in a better place. She had a lot of illness, a lot of pain, and her transition to another life was one that was pain free. When I was there at her bedside when she passed, and her face just, I mean, and this is true, her face just changed. It was radiant, is all I can say. So I tried to find, I mean, I found joy in that. I found joy and peace in the fact that she was gone and she wasn't going to be in my life anymore, but she was no longer in the pain that she was in. You may, be suffering from difficulties in families. You must, obviously you're going to do the best that you can as a mother, as a partner, or whatever it is. But things are not always going to be perfect. And so you have to again look beyond yourself to find, okay, what is happening? How can I find peace in what is happening? And if I can no longer do anything that's going to make a big difference, how can I be peaceful with that decision?
Hmm. So sometimes our deepest suffering comes from the gap between what we want and what we have. How can
Mm.
limiting or how can limitation or limitation, the very thing causing our trouble, become unexpected doorway to discovering what truly matters?
So I think it depends on exactly what you're talking about. If we want something because everybody else has it, I mean, I would consider that to be a shallow limitation. Now, obviously, if you are homeless, if you don't get enough to eat, if you are in an abusive situation and you want something else, right? Those are fair. I mean, those are things that we should have. We are, yes, we should have enough to eat, and we should live in a place that is comfortable and warm, and we should have good relationships. um, and those are things that I turn to my faith for, that I try to encourage other people in. But if I want a better car, or if I want, something like that. Those are not the important things. I know sometimes they seem like it, especially when we see commercials on television and social media, but that's not the important thing. I mean, if you have a car to drive around with and it goes, that is good, right? But if we are doing self comparison, that is very, very dangerous. It can kind of, I think, mess us up into thinking that we are not at a level as someone else. Those kinds of what we call limitations, I think, are self-imposed limitations. They're not really limitations. I would say, look at what you have. Be grateful. Be grateful for what you have. And if you have opportunities to do things, and perhaps trade in a car and get a new one, okay, that's great. But look at what you have and be happy and satisfied in that. Now, from my perspective as a woman of faith, I am going to look at my relationship with my God, I'm going to read the Bible. I am going to try to understand scripture and how that applies in my life and how I can find the joy and the fulfillment in there. If that's not for you, I think you have to look and see, what you have around you and appreciate even the little things that perhaps you have not noticed. There's so much we can take for granted. And I think that that is a big step toward finding joy in your life.
A big step indeed. So, Miss Yvette, let's talk about the choice timeline. In your experience, does joy hardship typically arrives as a sudden discovery or a gradual practice or something that only makes sense into retrospect? What is the relationship between things and its depth?
I think it can happen both ways. In my life, and I can just give you examples from that and from the women that I talk to on my podcast, it can be very much a surprise. Things can happen suddenly that you don't expect, but it also can be a long term series of events or a long term thing that you have lived with, and for whatever reason, perhaps decided to live with. So I'll give you a couple of examples. So if you are in a relationship that is troublesome. I've already said that we're not going to be happy all the time, but I'm going to use the word happy just this time to kind of explain it. If you are in a relationship and you don't talk anymore, you guys are taking each other for granted. I'm not talking about abusive relationships. I want people to be safe. You should be safe in your own home. If you are being abused, you don't have to take that. You should try to find ways that you can be safe. So I'm not talking about that. But if you're just talking about a relationship, and this is common, where you guys just don't talk anymore, you're taking each other for granted, then that can be a long-term thing where suddenly you wake up and you're like, I'm not happy anymore. Again, I'm going to use this word in this case, right? I'm not happy anymore. And maybe I don't even know why. How did we get here? Right? So that could be a long-term thing. And then things can suddenly happen. So, for example, I was moving from Oklahoma to Kansas City. And I moved, and I've talked about this on my blog before because it's such a weird story. But when I moved here and drove into the driveway of the house that I had rented, there were people living in the house. I did not expect that. That was a sudden, chaotic situation that was scary, that I didn't know what to do with that. The movers are coming the next day. What's going to happen? That's something that I could not have planned for, and it certainly was unexpected. And my joy was thrown out of place because there was so much. You know how it is when you're moving. There's so many moving parts, and this was a big piece, right? To actually come to your home and start moving in. People had you know I don't want to say that they were scammers or anything. I think what happened, and this does happen, that they had been scammed themselves by someone on online who told them how to get in the house and told them they could have this house for a certain amount of money. I think that they were scammed, but it affected both of us. So that one example was a long term example where all of a sudden you wake up one day and you're like, I'm in a situation where I'm not happy and maybe I don't know how I got here. Or maybe it's a job. Maybe you've been at your job for a long time and you make, your money, you make money, you contribute to your household, and that's okay. But all of a sudden one day you're like, how did I get here? And should I stay, right, at this job? So that's going to be your long term. But then sometimes things can just come out of the blue. What I have found, and this happened in both situations, in my long term relationship, which was a divorce to my first husband, and in the chaotic, weird situation of trying to move to a new city and finding that someone is staying in the house that you just rented. I had to know that both of those were bigger than me. Okay. Particularly that last one, because there was nothing I could do. Um, that night when I got there, literally nothing I could do. So for me, again, relying on my faith, I prayed and I knew that there's nothing I can do. So I'm going to go to bed. I'm going to try to get some rest. I'm going to leave this to my creator and let him figure it out. And then the next day, we're going to see what we can do. And it all turned around the next day. I mean, it was quite amazing how everything worked out the next day. But a long term thing, that's going to take some more work. That's going to take some more work. And you're going to have to decide, uh, you know, what am I, how did I get here? Do you know? Perhaps that's where you talk to other people, such as counselors, um, perhaps such as a member of your clergy, and maybe even sometimes your girlfriends. Although, again, be careful, be careful with that. Talk to someone perhaps who's detached from the situation. But ultimately, these are big issues that you can't necessarily change alone. I mean, yeah, you can make a rash decision and say, okay, I'm going to do this. But generally, these are bigger decisions. Again, these decisions are also bigger than you. And so I think we have to look at that and look at it through a lens like that to determine how can I, again, it's sometimes it's not all about me. How can I look at it through this bigger lens? And I'm going to say again, because of my faith, you've got to pray. You've got to try to understand where where God is in the middle of your mess. Generally, He's there, and what you need to be doing. Generally, that's prayer. That's being um, trying to find peace in the situation and trying to understand I can't fix this, so I'm just going to give it up to God or maybe the universe.
Very well said, Miss Yvette. So, when everything feels overwhelming, where do you direct attention? What's the power in finding joy in something microscopic, a texture, a scent, or a single uh, moment when a macro picture is bleak?
Yeah. So for me, I find that if you are open to situations around you, this is what has happened to me many times. And somehow it takes my mind off of things. So it's not just taking a walk and noticing, the wildflowers or something like that. I mean, that's certainly beautiful. That can help. But for me, it's being aware of those surroundings and understanding like what they mean to you and maybe what have you not noticed before. um for example, I was going somewhere and I had a task that I had not completed. I had to go to the post office and mail some letters. I just hadn't done it. Um through it's a complicated story and I won't go through all of it, but the letters were to encourage another person, right? And I needed to mail them, but I hadn't gotten around to it. And in this moment, I realized, even in the middle of a busy, busy day, I realized that I had not mailed the letter yet, right? And so I knew that I needed to change my day to make time to go mail this letter. And I had to go to the post office because it was a letter mailed to people in Australia. So I couldn't just put it in the mailbox. I had to go to the post office and get the proper stamps. And this was to encourage people in Australia during the wildfires. And I was sending a letter to some people that I was connected with because I wanted to, again, encourage them. That was a very small thing, and but I had to rearrange my day to get it done. One time I lost my phone. We all know we all know how important these things are, right? I had accidentally left it on the top of my car. I don't know if you've ever done that, but I have done that before. And as I was driving to work, I I kind of heard something fall, and I in that instant I knew what it was. So I went back home and I retraced my steps. I got out of the car and I walked along the road where I thought this happened. And I found the phone. It was on the side of the road. in grass, so it's kind of hard to find. But as I was walking down this road and I was looking generally on the road, like on the pavement, but something told me to just turn my gaze to the right and look in the grass. And again, I opened myself to that prompting, and there was the phone. I never would have seen it. I never would have seen it otherwise. So there are these small things or seemingly small things that can happen if you open yourself up and not close yourself. Open your mind, open yourself. We're on our speaking of the phone, we're on our phone all the time. Often we are thinking about what we have to do the next day. We're thinking about what the day is happening before us, how it's unfolding before us, and we can miss so many important things, little things that sometimes can make a big difference in your life. I would definitely would say go smell the flowers. That's an expression. Absolutely. But while you're doing that, try to pay attention to some things that you might have missed before.
Well, Miss Yvette, before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, People, because my abstract essay is already in sixth season, abstract poetry in third season, and my book 101 review in sixth season as well. Comedy 101 in third season, and my food 101 is sixth season too. Geography 101 love letters, movie 101 review, music 101 are fifth season, Science 101, Sex 101 in fourth season, Trivia 101, Law 101, Mental Health 101, Motivation 101, Entrepreneurship 101, and of course, Book 101. No, Bible versus 101 is are my baby podcast. So please listen to them wherever you listen to your podcast. So Miss Yvette, tell us what if the capacity for deep joy is actually the legacy of our troubles leave us? How do we honor the difficulty while still gratefully accepting these complicated inheritance?
Oh my goodness. That's a tough question. That is a really big question, right? I would say that the most important thing for us is to realize that we have been put on this earth for a reason. I do not believe we're an accident. I do not believe in coincidence. I do believe that we have been put here for a reason. We are on a journey, we are on a path. And if we walk this path open to everything around us and understanding that you may have some sad days, you may have happy days, but you can live a life of purpose. You can be filled with the kind of joy that sustains you, and you can live a great life.
Indeed, a great life, great life. And thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. Ms. Yvette, so can you please invite our listeners to support your podcast, your advocacy, or anything you want to promote on Africa?
Absolutely. You can go to positivelyjoy.com and you can go to YvetteWalker.com and find out more about my podcast ministry, about my speaking ministry, because I do speak mostly to women about different issues, about how to live their best lives and to find joy right where you are.
Yes, people, let's support Miss Yvette Walker because if you support her for more and more empowering advocacy like this to rise. So, Miss Yvette, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Daniel.
Monica, people, see you soon.